Welcome back to Viewpoint. We asked you today on social media if moving the drone program from CIA to the Pentagon was a good thing. A lot of interesting responses, and on Facebook, Tom Motter wrote, "Absolutely, DoD activities are much more transparent with congressional oversight." I agree, Tom. It's reassuring to know that if we're killed by flying robots, there's going to be an investigation afterwards. If you have a comment for the show, please tweet us at ViewpointCTV or at John Fugelsang, or use the hashtag Viewpoint, or post it on our Facebook page. Now, 10 years ago, just before the start of the invasion of Iraq, the voices of support were loud, clear, bipartisan, and relentlessly brought to us by the corporate mainstream media. Among these voices were many so-called liberal hawks, which is a classic oxymoron. Liberal hawks, that's like hot ice, jumbo shrimp, or Kesha music. Many of these liberal hawks are today trying to make amends for their dangerously, deeply wrong position. In a column published yesterday, journalist Ezra Klein, who we all love, wrote, "I supported the Iraq War, and I'm sorry. I have my excuses, of course. I was a college student, young and dumb." Well, I'm not too outraged over a college student supporting it. It's more the electeds. But columnist Jonathan Chait, who we also love, blames his support for the war on everything from the pace of magazine publishing to what essentially comes down to peer pressure, writing, quote, "I wasn't afraid to alienate my colleagues, editors, and employer, but I didn't go out of my way to do it either. I have a lot of regret for this. Unfortunately, regret doesn't bring back the hundreds of thousands of lives and limbs destroyed." Joining me now to discuss these apologies, I'm really thrilled about this panel, creator and co-writer of broad comedy, comedian Katie Goodman, comedian and author of Moment of Clarity, Lee Camp, a man I'm playing with in Stowe, Vermont on March 30th, whose new Moment of Clarity web show can be seen at leecamp.net, and comedian Sabrina Jalise, who can be seen tomorrow night on MTV's Failosophy. You'll know it's MTV because there's no music there. Welcome, guys. Great to have you all. So, questions, and let me start with you, Sabrina, since you're our newbie.
Go for it.
Great to have you. What's your initial reaction to these liberal hawks now looking back and apologizing? I mean, what do you make of their reasoning now for supporting the war then, when so many people were against it?
Oh, no, 36 million people around the world were like, don't do it. I don't know why you would do it. It's like they were...
More than 36 million in this country were saying don't do it.
Yeah, so they're still doing it. It was like the media was like an angry teen on Dr. Phil, you know? The entire audience is like, boo, and they're like, you don't know me!
Well, it's interesting. Ezra Klein, his excuse, really, his youth excuse, which is valid, I guess, was echoed in 2010 by left-wing blogger Matthew Iglesias. He wrote, "I was 21 years old and kind of a jerk." 21-year-old guy, shocking. "Being for the war was a way to simultaneously be a free-thinking dissident in the context of a college campus and also be on the side of the country's power elite." I don't like that one. That means to say, like, I was rebelling against being a rebel so I wouldn't be called a liberal cliche. It's like, you know what, when so many millions knew it was BS and there were going to be lives in the balance, you don't get to claim that right now. Lee, do you buy into this idea that youth clouds your view of a situation? I mean, can it also work the other way in that youth encourages you to question politicians who want to bomb third world nations of brown people?
I mean, that is the time to stand up and say that the older people are full of crap, but at the same time, young and dumb is a good excuse. I don't know that, like, say, Hillary Clinton can claim, "Oh, 55, I was young and dumb, I was naive.
I was so stoned back then."
but the apology thing doesn't do anything for me. It's like, it's not about apologizing. It's like, stop being a politician when you've killed like 1 million people because of your decisions. Maybe politician wasn't for you. You know, maybe go to another job. Like work at a state fair.
I respect what you're saying, but in a way, as a taxpayer and as a guy who now has a child who gets to pay for that war the rest of his life, they can apologize to me. I'll take it, and I love all of these guys. And again, with the caveat, Katie, of course, that at least these are the ones apologizing. We can turn over to that other cable news network and see lots of people telling you to feel so good about that wonderful war. I mean, you know, are there some media personalities that you're more willing to forgive than others?
No. No. Just
None?
No.
No.
No, not at all. I mean, the problem with the whole, oh God, I don't want to be the devil's advocate on this at all.
No,
but
please.
the problem was that, no.
Who wants a bunch of liberals agreeing with each other?
Right. Is that the problem was that right from the get, I mean, we had Colin Powell, we had all these people who looked really very convincing, a lot of, a complete lack of information, but a lot of believable stories. And the problem with Washington reporters is that they spend all day together, they read the same things, they go to the same cocktail parties, they're talking to the same people, so it's very insulated. And
that's the bubble.
that's where, right.
Yeah, and
Like, how did that happen? I lived in Canada at the time. I had nothing to do with this. But the whole world was looking at America like, America, why are you shitting your pants right now?
yes,
And
well.
America, it's 10 years later, and they're like, still wearing my pooped up pants.
Well, you know, in fairness, let's talk about the media at the time in general. War is great for ratings. And of course, at the time, 2 of the big 4 networks were owned by companies that manufactured weapons used in this war. What I said on last night's show is you're not going to see Howard Zinn or Gore Vidal, both of them rest in peace, or Noam Chomsky or Jimmy Carter coming on to talk about nonviolent alternatives. You're going to get retired generals talking about how we can take them out.
Right, and the media loves the run up to a war, the game. You saw the people that spoke out, like Phil Donahue, were pushed aside.
He lost his job. Highest rated show on MSNBC.
And then on top of that, you have, like, we've got trillions of dollars in the military-industrial complex. When you spend that much money creating things to blow people up, you end up blowing people up. If they spent that much money creating friendship bracelets, we would find a way to get them on people. If people didn't want the bracelets, we'd hold them down and put them on.
Then let's talk about the ones who've never admitted they were wrong, like Thomas Friedman or Sean Hannity. I mean, is there a special?
These are also the people who, when they were young, probably never admitted they like slept with the wrong person. I mean, I was thinking about the youth excuse. You know, it's like I'm not sure that they, at the time, they probably felt like they were going on the information they had. So why should they apologize now?
Well, because we all had the same information. We all had access to Scott Ritter coming out and saying, "Hey, I've been there. They don't have these weapons."
Right, but somebody and 36 million people are standing up and they didn't. I'm just saying what their justification might be.
Absolutely.
If Hannity apologized every time he got something wrong, he'd be doing it from now till death.
I know Roger Ailes would be in the poorhouse. We talked last night about the support of the war from politicians on both sides of the aisle, including, of course, the 2 Clintons. Have we not heard enough mea culpas across the board over this? I mean, would an apology from Mrs. Clinton help or hurt her chances for 2016?
Well, I think it depends which war we're in 2015. You know, I mean, if we're sitting there looking, you know, and we're in Syria, Iran, you know, I mean, it depends what is happening then, whether we're going to say, oh, she was on, you know, which side. Yeah.
Sabrina?
I feel like apologizing is never really a good move. I mean, in a relationship, you apologize. You're done for like a week. Everything you do that week is like, well, you remember the thing about the dishwasher.
Well, let me counter that. It says Hillary Clinton, nothing but love for you, but Hillary Clinton came out on this week, on the eve of the 10-year anniversary, to apologize not for that, but for supporting the Defense of Marriage Act 17 years ago.
Yes.
Which completely deflected media attention from how wrong she was 10 years ago. DOMA was bad. It didn't get 4,000 soldiers killed. Lee?
But you don't see, like, it's not like they wouldn't do it again. It's not just the apology. It's about not doing it again. It's like
some of them wouldn't do it again.
I don't know. With Iran, it's happening again. It's like we're going to listen to some spotty, you know, evidence, and then we're going to bomb people that,
but
that
no
had
one's
nothing
talking about,
to do with it.
in fairness, to be devil's advocate, no one's talking about committing ground troops in Iran. And I know, I can tell you there are some Democrats like Joe Biden who would never get behind something like this again.
Yeah, but most of the deaths there were plenty of deaths from the shock and awe. You don't need the ground troops.
Well, indeed, of course.
But some of it, too, is, you know, I grew up, this is an age thing here, John, we're going to, you know.
Speak for yourself, Please, go
older
ahead.
than me. You know, we had the Gulf War influence us more. So,
Yes.
you know, after that, the flip-flop was, oh, maybe we can get in and get out like that. That kind of worked.
Back then, there were only 7% of us saying that was wrong, to have a war to restore the dictator of Kuwait.
So now, after this one, after Iraq, we're all going to be like, no, we're not getting into anything. Then we'll get into something really quick, easy, and out. And it's just going to keep...
Really quick, I got 10 seconds left. Is there any validity in the statements that Iraqis are better off now than they were then? Katie?
Besides the million that are dead?
Lee?
Yeah, living ones? Or which were you talking about? No, there's no...
Sabrina?
I'd ask my Iraqi friends, but they don't talk to me because I live in the States now.
Exactly right. My panel stays with me after the break. Sabrina wins. When we talk about how sorry Harry Reid is for acting like Harry Reid. Welcome back to Viewpoint. One last quick question for my esteemed panel. Is there any issue y'all think everyone in Washington could agree on? Katie?
I think they did agree on not taking a pay cut for the sequester.
Very good, yes. And God bless them for coming and finding consensus on that. That was very brave.
Together.
Lee Camp?
I'd say they do a pretty good job agreeing on indefinite detention of American citizens, or never speaking of Bradley Manning. Those are two things they agree on.
Boy, it's a good thing we deposed Saddam, who threw people in a cell without a trial, wasn't it? And Sabrina?
I feel like if there was a government-funded trip, Mark Sanford could take them to the Appalachian Trail. Where they could all, experience the Appalachian Trail together.
It'd be great for them all to go to the Appalachian Trail.
What country is that in? Brazil?
That's in Argentina.
Argentina?
Yes, but in fairness to Mark Sanford, he did prove something very important, that the voters of South Carolina are willing to forgive adultery as long as you have sufficient hatred for gay people. Which brings me to tonight's F-bomb. Doesn't Harry Reid remind you of one of those S&M slaves who just keeps getting pummeled because he forgot his safety word? Or maybe he just pretends to forget his safety word because he likes being pummeled? See, we've talked extensively on this show about how Harry Reid repeatedly promised he'd enact filibuster reform on the first work day of the year, and then he crumpled like a hollow inflatable guy outside a car dealership. And we've talked extensively about how Harry Reid was going to let the assault weapons ban die in the Senate. We all knew he was going to do it, despite the fact that it's supported, as of today, by a majority of Americans, 57%. Not that that means anything in a democracy. But the assault weapons ban is also supported by Sylvester Stallone, and was previously supported by the late Ronald Reagan, two guys I never expected to see to Harry Reid's immediate left. And now he's let it happen. He wants you to know he feels really bad about it. He feels so bad that he let this ban fail. But Harry, I know you're terrified of having the NRA turn on you and give you a lower rating. You see, back in 2010, I remember, you almost lost your Senate seat to Sharon Angle, the first major party candidate ever to run for Senate on an outpatient basis. You're up for re-election in 4 years, Harry. So naturally, keeping assault weapons out of the hands of potentially deranged civilians and saving American lives in the process is far less important than you still getting to be a senator in your 80s. You've said you feel just awful about it, but it's not feasible because you just don't have the votes. You wish you had the votes, but you counted. The votes aren't there. We can't do anything more than that. Sorry, will of the American people. What's the point of fighting? And I respect that. But Harry, it's one thing to say, look, we fought hard for it, we have to capitulate, but you only get to say that if you actually fought hard for it. And you didn't, Senator Reid. You caved like an unregulated coal mine. You folded like wet cardboard. I've run out of metaphors for you. And I get that this assault weapons ban was always going to die, that you guys were never serious about it. It was your sacrificial lamb so you can get background checks. I get that the Democrat-Republican conflict is often a game of good cop, bad cop, or in your case, Harry, old cop who refuses to retire because he can't give up wearing the badge. But Newtown really did change things. And if you can't realize that, if you don't recognize there's an increasingly outraged majority over the easy availability of mass killing machines, if you don't understand that if there was ever a time to stand for principle and risk losing an election, then I'm sorry, dear leader, you are as useless as a human appendix. And you know what? Let me just say one thing about assault weapons. They can't be called assault weapons. A toaster that's plugged in is an assault weapon if you drop it in somebody's bathtub. They're machines designed to kill lots of people really fast, and some of us don't want civilians to have easy access. So when President Obama gave his State of the Union, all he asked for was to call it to a vote. That's it. Let the American people know where every member of Congress stands on the availability of these weapons designed lots to kill people really fast. Guys like James Holmes. When the president said this, why did you applaud, Harry? If you had no intention of having a vote, why pretend for the camera? If you, the leader of the Senate, can't have one measly vote on this to honor the children killed in Newtown, then why don't you just leave the Senate and do a job you'd be right for, like taking a page out of Fred Thompson's book and becoming a TV reverse mortgage spokesman. That's Viewpoint for tonight. I want to thank my panel, Katie Goodman of Broad Comedy, Lee Camp from Moment of Clarity at leecamp.net, and Sabrina Jalise. Look for her tomorrow night on MTV's Failosophy. Thank you all. Have a great evening, everybody. Good night, Mom.